I'm just going to remind us of what we've just heard in the gospel and give it a little bit of a context as well. What's just been happening before Jesus' journey across the water, he's been probably in Capernaum and he's been preaching to the people. He's been preaching to the crowds from the boat, probably all day, and now it's evening. He's decided we need to leave this place, probably go somewhere where it's quiet. And so they start traveling across the Sea of Galilee. And the Sea of Galilee, as you probably know, is one of these places where storms can suddenly swirl up and become very strong and very dangerous. And this is the situation that Jesus and the disciples find themselves in. They're crossing the waters and the wind start to rise. And actually, the situation seems to me a little improbable in the fact that you have these strong winds whipping up the water. You've got the waves lashing the boat, and they're starting to come into the boat. And then you have the disciples who are seeing the wind and the waves and the water starting to fill the boats. And you can imagine that they're kind of getting panicked and they're shouting at each other, trying to save the boat from going down. So there's a lot of commotion and action. And then there's Jesus at the stern of the boat, sleeping with his head on a pillow. Not disturbed in the slightest by the commotion that is going on around him. The disciples are terrified of the storm, terrified of drowning, going down, and all they can see is this darkness, the wind and the waves and the danger and everything that could wipe them out and overwhelm them. They've forgotten that Jesus is there for the most part. But Jesus is not at all disturbed by the storm. He's at peace and he's sleeping. The storm is not troubling him. The journey that Jesus is making with the disciples is also symbolic of the journey that we ourselves make as Christians, leaving our past life, the shore, the crowds, those who would have us follow them and do as they would do, to step into the boat with Jesus, the boat which is the church, and travel with Jesus to the far shore. The far shore is heaven. That's where we're aiming for, and we're working together to reach that shore. And on the way, we will experience storms. We do. You all know this. You've all experienced it yourselves. These storms that strike us, strike the church, and they've always been there and will always be there. We can forget that Jesus is there. In fact, many people do not even realize he's in the boat with them. And so as far as they're concerned, they're alone. And all they will see is the storm, and there's no help, and therefore despair and darkness is all that they're looking forward to. The disciples, at the end of this story, remember that Jesus is there. And the strange thing is, they rebuke Jesus. I don't know if you noticed that. They actually rebuke Jesus. Jesus, don't you care? We're about to die. What are you doing sleeping? You should be here helping us. Get up. Get to work. Don't you care? Don't you care? Of course I care. You can imagine Jesus in his head, in a split second, responding to that, don't you care? Of course I care. I, the immortal one, the eternal one, have left heaven to be with you. I've left the richness, my home in heaven, to come and be homeless for you. Of course I care. I've left heaven, humbled myself for you, and I will humble myself even more by dying for you. Of course I care. That's why I am here. In a split second, maybe, you might have thought that. Don't you realize who it is that's in the boat with you? Who I am? And then he shows them. Be quiet, be calm. And the storm dissipates completely. God, who created the seas and controls the seas, as we heard in Job, the book of Job, speaks into the chaos, and into the chaos comes order and stillness. Jesus rebukes the storm, and then he rebukes the disciples. Why are you so frightened? How is it that you have no faith? Jesus, don't you care we're about to die? He's in the boat sleeping in the middle of the storm. Why is he sleeping in the middle of the storm? Because he knows they'll be okay. Jesus is there. They will be fine. The storms will come and they will go. Jesus will stay. And where Jesus is, there will always be peace. The storms might not disappear, but he's there and we can experience peace in the storm. So if we're not to call upon Jesus, as it seems to be because we'll be safe, what are we to do? Well, I think we do call upon Jesus. He is there. He does want to give us aid. The disciples didn't know who he was. Who is this who gives orders to the sea and to the waves? They didn't fully understand him. They didn't fully know who he was. We have a better idea, but we too still need to know fully who Jesus is, to be able to trust him completely with our lives, to be able to hold on to him in the storm and not panic, to look at him instead of the storm. He will be with us all the way through. That he doesn't seem to act doesn't mean to say he doesn't care or doesn't know. He does. He asks us to trust him, to believe his words that he will be with us to the end of time.